you for coming home. Sorry that the chairs are all warm. I left them here, I could have sworn. These are my salad days, slowly being eaten away. Just another play for today. Oh, but I'm proud of you, but I'm proud of you. Nothing left to make me feel small. Luck has left me standing so tall. Gold, always believe in your soul. You've got the power to know you're indestructible. Always believe it, 'cause you are gold. Life that you found.
Hello, thank you all for joining. Here we are at the famous Dean Street Studios. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
That's really cool. That's really cool here.
We thought this would be a great opportunity for us to tie in the name of the event that we have today, where actually you're mining for the gold from your voice data, where the famous gold was recorded. So I'll firstly introduce myself, Maxwell Summerfield from Citycom. This is the third in our series of LinkedIn Live events that we've been running. What we're looking to do is share experience, knowledge on some of the challenges and that we see in the financial services market. Housekeeping. We are all on LinkedIn Live here. So if you have any questions, please can you write those in the comments section and I'll be monitoring those throughout the session. If we cannot answer all of those within the 30 minutes, we will reach back out to you post the event. For the new people on the session, who are Citycom? Citycom have been around for 10 years operating in the financial services markets. Our heritage is understanding voice and video. So what are we going to cover today? Following the first and the second LinkedIn Live, we covered what and why it is important to have a voice assurance program and what those signals are that you can obtain from your voice. The links to the previous sessions are on our website, but they're also on our LinkedIn page where you can go back and view those. Today, we're going to discuss how you realize a tangible benefit from using your voice as data and being able to obtain and mine the gold from that. So firstly, we'll start with how to use the signals to help manage and control your business, the art of the possible, using signals produced from the data. What are the benefits you can get from those signals and how you can use those. Today, I have with me Mark Whiteman, the CEO of Citycom. Hi, Mark.
Hi there. How cool is this?
It's awesome. I was playing with the guitars earlier, the keyboard.
And I think you're sitting on Phil Collins' stool.
If anyone missed the previous two sessions, those are back in the comments section, again, on the events page. So let's quickly cover what we spoke about in a couple of the last sessions, just to quickly refresh our memory. Signals that help to manage and control your business. What are they?
Okay, so thanks, Max. And just to reiterate, what a cool place this is. I mean, as Max has said, this business has been going 10 years now, and I founded it 10 years ago. And interestingly enough, my father's heritage was his first job, coming out of kind of university, was to be in a studio like this, not a million miles away from here at EMI Studios, where he worked on the first production of the Beatles album. So
Cool.
Somehow audio seems to run in the blood somewhere. So we'll see what happens. But really cool that we've been able to do something slightly different. And I think the analogy is really cool here. Is we walked in and the sound quality in this booth is just amazing. You can really hear the difference. And we talked in the first LinkedIn Live about the importance of quality, and particularly in financial services, whether it be contact center type environment or whether it be a trader or just an office environment. It's impossible to replicate the sorts of sound quality that you've got here, but that would be great because it would make the use of audio even greater. But a great analogy. And of course, the other analogy is that the gold is, we believe that audio is gold.
Absolutely.
In the first two, we looked at how you need to make sure that the quality of what you are capturing is as good as possible. So keep it in mind with what you're trying to do with it. And that was around voice assurance and making sure it was there and that it's of good quality. And secondly, we talked with Nigel's help from Intelligent Voice about what can be done in terms of the signals that can be dragged out of those voice data files, if you like,
Hmm.
in order to be able to see benefit. And today we're going to talk about how you take advantage of that.
Okay, awesome. So let's jump in. Within those signals, is there specific things that we're looking for? Patterns, behaviors, trends that you can identify?
Yeah, those three key signals we talked about last time,
Mhm.
really around words and phrases, so commonly known as lexicon
Mhm.
searching around, known words, known phrases, as well as sentiment analysis. So literally, as you go through the communication, we can score and we can surface the signals, whether people are jolly, not so jolly, whether they start jolly and end up less jolly, and what have you, as well as key biometrics to ensure that we know who's on that call.
Okay.
And actually who's not known on the call.
Yeah.
So you've got the known person, the unknown person. But yeah, I think those signals needs to be looked at not just in kind of black and white, and this is definitely there, this is not definitely there, but actually you can look at those signals over a trending period, behaviors.
Mhm.
So lots of value can be created from understanding not just what's happened in that particular instance or even on that particular call, but over a series of time. And I think that's really where the value starts to really come out. It's not just a moment in time, it is over a trending period. So I think that's really where those signals start to become far more valuable.
Yeah, and have we seen any technology that's kind of encompassing all of that, would you say, today, to be able to deliver this, to get the insights?
Yes, I think there's a lot of tools out there that can do that you can actually surface the insights against. I think the first thing you've got to do is make sure you're understanding what the signals are that you want and how you want to use them. And what business unit within an organization or use case is actually there that derives the value from it, because just processing data for data's sake is no good. You need to have an end game and an end goal on it.
Absolutely. So why do you want to be monitoring and tracking this information? Because you've got all of this gold that you probably might not know that you've got. What do you use it for? How feasible is it to be completed? And the history of failure in voice recording has been a big challenge.
So let's talk about that in the context of financial services markets, if you like. I think there's been some quite narrow discussions around how voice has been used, largely driven by regulatory compliance, the requirement to record any kind of interaction that somebody that's selling or buying something is doing, and it's been driven by regulatory guidelines globally for many years now. And in the past it was just about recording it and then storing it, and it kind of went into a dead pool, if you like. But more recently, but driven by regulatory compliance, and I think some other use cases, surfacing that gold, surfacing the information that is within those audio recordings has become both something that has been desired from a value point of view, but equally also has had to be done, particularly around things like surveillance and review. So there are many different drivers that I think that are there within different business units, and we're seeing quite a lot more diversity around people's requirements from voice. Now that perhaps the stigma attached to it was years ago, it was just too difficult, it wasn't possible to do it, the quality and the outputs were poor. So consequently, it was all a bit of a waste of time.
And we thought voice was going away. That was 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
It was all going to IMs and chats.
We were all going to not have a mouth anymore, or just have more fingers, I think, to push keyboards. But no, you're absolutely right. And with the resurgence of voice, people talking to Siri and things like this, and the younger generation are actually using voice again and sending voice messages. I think voice is back on the pitch, so to speak. I'd always argue that it never went away, but I think there's an immense amount of value. I think it's worth, also establishing that a lot of value is derived from a genuine voice communication, however much the world moves towards digitization around different systems, and data transactions. The value of understanding not just the spoken word, but the sentiment of that
The
spoken
way you
word
say it.
and the way you say
Mhm.
it, and how that's delivered is key. And systems and machines and AI and NLP are all assisting, in making that happen. So what we see is now it diversifying away from just being surveillance and compliance, into contact centers wanting to get value from those communications in terms of quality assurance. Are customers being looked after well? Are the contact center folks doing a good job?
Mhm.
Are they starting the calls happy, and are they finishing happy? Is the end user starting the call unhappy, and has they been turned around?
Mhm.
Also, are the right things being said on those calls? Is there script that needs to be adhered to from perhaps a regulatory point of view, but also a desired point of view? Yeah, and right the way through into automating, taking voice and automating that voice into data, enabling a more effective and efficient way of, let's say, moving voice into trading systems.
Mhm.
Yeah, which I think in the past was seen as kind of almost a kind of a scientific impossibility.
Mhm.
But all of these use cases and business units around any organization, whether it be financial services or not, would, I'm sure, see value in turning that into some form of gold.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that is now definitely on the table.
Absolutely. And it makes total sense. So once you've processed all of this original data and you've obtained the signals, how are you surfacing all of this?
Okay, so that's a good point. Because we talk about the art of the possible.
Yep.
And there's still, I think, probably a lot of people that would be quite cynical because of the history of this, as you mentioned before, in terms of it not working. But I think you have to, there was an old adage that I was taught early doors in my business life, which is, how do you eat an elephant whole? Bite-sized chunks.
Mhm.
So you have to understand that you've got to get the right quality. Yep, you've got to assure that quality and make sure it's normalized and that everything's lined up.
Mhm.
You've then got to be able to filter it or decide which of those files are usable. Yeah, and then you need to process it, and you get these wonderful signals. Yeah, and from these wonderful signals, you need to output them into some form of analytical tool. Yeah, and historically, that's been part of a surveillance system, or part of a system that an organization will have purchased. Yeah, so if you get audio right and you've already got these systems in place, it brings far more value to those systems that have been purchased, particularly if thus far they've been, let's say, slightly unsuccessful
Mhm.
when it comes to the voice element. Yeah, so these signals, once they're processed, can be exhausted, if you like, out of a system and into an analytic system where you can manipulate those signals, to do things like trending analysis, specific searching, but some great stuff that probably has got further with e-coms stuff, things like emails and chats and data, than anybody thought voice could do. And I think voice probably surpasses that. Yep. So there's a existing asset that can be sweated around that, but there's also the ability to just simplify from those signals own databases. So rather than be part of an integrated system, we often see people using tools like Power BI, which we use to actually delve into those signals and tease out just the specifics that are required for that use case. Again, whether that would be regulatory compliance, or whether it be quality assurance and customer experience, or whether it be any reason for wanting to dive into that gold. Yep. And some of those are standard dashboards where standard things are looked at. And standard lexicons can be loaded, or some of them are very much more bespoke, and we would kind of go down the more data mining route with that and look at what use cases are required. But all of those tools, if you like, systems are how you surface and bring the voice to life. And you're bringing together the existing data that has already been captured, the metadata, that's already there on the recorders and the telephone systems, and then the more valuable signals that, using engines that we've described, you can get scores around sentiment, biometrics, the accuracy of picking lexicons, and then on into some super clever stuff around, trends and behaviors.
Absolutely, and it really kind of people need to start on the journey, because once we see day in day out, we start to surface some of this information for people, and they go,
Yeah.
Jesus, I didn't know a lot of this.
Yeah.
So it's, do you think it's a journey that they need to go on, or they buy something and go full on, I want all of my signals now?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to your earlier point of perhaps voice has been the underperforming media, you know, and I think that everybody will always buy a tool that's got a pretty dashboard on it, because
Mhm.
that's the thing that brings things to life. It doesn't matter whether it's in voice or whether it's in anything.
Yeah.
The visualization of this. But actually, you're right. It is about a journey, and you've got to be able to make sure that your voice is conditioned to be able to get the benefits. But that's improved immeasurably over the 10 years of Citycom's existence, from being fairly raw in terms of technology to now being fairly sophisticated. So even reasonably poor audio files, you can get good results from.
Mhm.
The key, I think, is to understand what is it you're looking for, and the different angles that each business unit, as I said, or use case require from within any business needs to sweat that asset. Yeah, some, as I said, looking more from a risk point of view, and others from a monetization point of view. There's some real value that can be derived from those voice conversations that thus far hasn't, I don't think, been thought about enough. And both should be part of the mix of using your gold.
It's interesting because people have obviously left voice alone potentially for a little bit. So actually understanding what those use cases are for voice, as opposed to your e-coms information, where you're actually looking specifically for words or things that people are saying in a message. The voice, you can, as you say, start to get sentiment. You can start to look at the different angles from the audio element.
Yeah, you're right. And we've seen not just with voice, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, video, but we've seen a great move towards understanding more than just regulatory compliance around voice. I think most people would say that their first run at voice would be a regulatory lexicon search, whether that be driven by litigation review, or maybe a regulatory review, or a surveillance program. You're looking for known words that are on the bad list, if you like, on the blacklist. But I think where it's moving to now is more about the intelligence that you can get from it, and sometimes that still is around risk, so conduct risk, with people working at home. What are they saying, what are they doing? Perhaps that wouldn't be what they would do in the office. There's a danger of that, so there's a conduct risk that people's language might slip. So the monitoring for that. But as I said, I think the use of the voice in terms of automating processes and gathering data and understanding what's going on in a trading environment is something that now is definitely possible and feasible. And then you look at other positives, like the challenges that everybody must have now around remote working, and how do you start to understand whether people are struggling when they're working from home, and the intonation of voice, and voice sentiment, is clearly an indicator to whether people are suffering when they're working by themselves. So there's lots of different applications here, which is obviously why we titled this one Gold, because there's a lot of gold in their files.
Well, and from my own experience, I was working in a contact center down in Australia, and it was, when you're in the office, your words and what you say and everything you do has to make sure it's structured. But as you start to be at home, the being sat at your dining room table or in your own study, the relaxation starts to come in, and you need to be tracked on what you are saying to make sure you're not doing anything incorrect. So no, that's interesting. So if somebody's already purchased either a complete surveillance tool or something that they're using to identify signals today, how can they benefit by really drilling into this and getting the signals that they're looking for?
I think the first thing that I think everyone needs to appreciate is that voice is a bit out there on its own. It doesn't perform the same way as normal data files do, and I think everybody accepts that. And that's probably been part of the struggle. However, if you can not only take the existing data that voice gives you and supplement it with these signals we talked about, and talked about those with Nigel at the last session,
Yeah.
and surfaced some of the information that we talked about today around biometrics, sentiment, and not just the words, but the trending of words, and perhaps understanding proactively what words and phrases are being used that are very unusual. So not even looking for known, but actually surfacing unknown trends.
Mhm.
I think that's really where it can feed into those signals, can feed into those existing systems.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to be careful that we don't either dismiss voice because it's too complicated, or overly simplify it by just saying, well, it's just a voice file, we'll throw it in, because the magnitude of effort required to look after voice and review voice and use voice, if it's not in a usable format, will make it impossible and non-viable from a cost point of view to use. We're seeing lots of organizations wanting to get more from their voice, as we've said, but just sitting someone down and listening to it is not the answer.
No.
Machines are the answer.
Yeah.
And I think the art of the possible is that can be achieved, but it is a little bit niche. And you need to probably talk to the experts about it.
Absolutely. And what are people now doing with video?
Okay. So the inevitable is happening, isn't it? I don't think anybody would have predicted the speed of which the adoption of tools like Zoom and Teams and WebEx and others would happen. And obviously that's been escalated, exaggerated, whatever you want to call it, because of the home working situation driven by the pandemic. But regardless of what drove it, and that digitization, if you like, of moving from the technology that was very based in the office and very around telephone systems and handsets, and now everybody being very much more used to doing things remotely and using these Zoom and Teams things, inevitably drives you towards the convergence between audio and video. And again, across all those use cases that we've kind of mentioned or touched on today, each one is a tool that now has video as a component part. Contact centers that used to just take calls and maybe also interacted via messaging, and now dealing with clients, face to face over a Zoom call.
Yes.
People are at home talking with counterparts. Yep. Over Teams.
Yeah. Team
meetings are taking place not in offices, but on collaborative tools such as WebEx. And the monitoring of that now becomes not just for audio, but it comes from video. Yep. And all the stuff that we've talked about and I've mentioned around things like conduct risk, performance management, quality assurance, how you're dealing with the customer, your sentiment, all of this is exaggerated with video, because it's another key component that gives you a great deal of gold. Yep. So like we're sat in this room, which started many years ago around pure audio. Yeah, around people cutting discs.
Yeah.
Not that I expect you to understand
Floppy
even
disk.
what I'm saying. Yeah, but it's a great place to look around here and think the heritage of this place. But it was originally around cutting a 45 disc, a single. Yeah, which no longer exists, and this industry moved into video.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and MTV was born, and we're going through the same journey when it comes to business, and that is, whether we like it or not, everybody is using the collaborative tools that are a combination of audio and video, and also sharing of screens, the sharing of data on those screens, documents, each other's work. It goes on and it goes on, and therefore, the next thing that needs to be considered is how do you mine that gold from the video element, the visual element of stuff, as well as the audio element. And our view is that the two needs to be joined. Yep, and the two together are both frighteningly accurate, frighteningly scary to some people, but frighteningly beneficial if used correctly by business units for the correct use cases. Yeah. So I think our journey has taken us from audio to video, and this industry's journey took them from audio to video. And I think clearly that's the next LinkedIn Live session.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mark. So we're at the end of the session. Thank you, everybody, for attending. The session has been recorded, so you'll be able to watch this post the event. We will be summarizing the points from this session, as we have done with the last couple of sessions as well. So we'll be distributing those via LinkedIn, so you will see those come out. The next event, Relatable, video killed the radio star. So we will send you all an invite for that session. Thank you all for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
We're off to play with the guitars.